Welcome to Mostly Minutia. I'm Colleen Lindell. This is episode 24, Standing Rock. Before I play this episode, I want to share a short story with you. Not my story, but my friend Nick's story. So I've mentioned before that I work as a camera assistant, and I've been working as a camera assistant for 10 years. I started in movies and commercials in Chicago, and now since I've moved to Los Angeles, I've been mostly working in television. And people told me, don't ever work in TV. It'll eat your brain. But I love working in television. So, inevitably, when you're working on set, what ends up happening is you talk with other crew members. And people start swapping war stories, so to speak, about other shows they've been on where things didn't go according to plan or where they somehow got into a crazy predicament that no other human could even dream up. Some of the stories are funny and some are not so funny, but regardless, whatever the situation is, it becomes known as quote-unquote a shit show. So I've taken it upon myself to start recording some of these stories because I thought listeners would really enjoy them. I'm calling this series Just a Shit Show. This first story is by my friend Nick Borges. Nick and I work together on MasterChef, and Nick is a technical supervisor on reality competition game shows. If you've ever seen a news control room with all the monitors, or if you've ever seen the show Unreal, when the producer goes into the control room and there's all the screens and you can see each camera angle, that is what Nick oversees, amongst a whole slew of other things, but that's for a totally different episode. Please enjoy Nick's story.
So, my name's Nick Borges, and I'm the technical supervisor of reality competition shows primarily. Some of the shows I've done are The Biggest Loser, MasterChef, The Taste, Strong, Marriage Boot Camp. I worked on a show that the New York Times called the worst use of the television medium since its inception, which is called Meow Mix Think Like a Cat Game Show. I'm currently on MasterChef. So this was a kind of like The Bachelor times 3. So there was 3 bachelors, 3 houses, 3 sets of women that were vying for their love. It was the worst run show that I'd ever been on, just on any number of levels. But it all kind of came to a head on this one particular shoot day where we were shooting it was either Calabasas or Thousand Oaks, California. In either case, it's a really wealthy community, and to get permits to shoot there is very expensive. And it's even more expensive to shoot past a certain time. Apparently, up until 7 p.m. you get one permit, and after 7 p.m. is a very different, very expensive permit. I was in the control room, and around 6:30 or 6:40, I noticed like a lot of sidebar conversations were happening while we were in the middle of shooting. Kind of the control room is a bit of a sacred place, that's where everyone is really carefully paying attention and watching things. The director is really focused on the shots that they're getting, and there's people logging what all the contestants are saying. There's like a lot going on. I noticed those conversations started to get more aggressive and lively. There was a lot of finger pointing going on. People were showing up on set that I'd never seen before. One of these people I'd never seen before started very frantically shouting and pointing, but I still couldn't quite make out the conversation that was going on. But suddenly she turned her attention to me, which was alarming because she was looking right in my face, and I didn't know this woman. And she yelled, "Shut it down." I kind of hushed her, and I said, "Oh, we're actually shooting right now." I thought she must not have realized that we were actively shooting a scene. So I was like, "Oh, you're going to want to be a little quiet. We're shooting right now." And she goes, "I don't give a shit. I said, shut this shit down." And I said, "Excuse me?" And she said, "I said, pull the plug on him." So I literally went over to the extension cord that was powering everything, and I pulled it. And as you might expect, everybody freaked out at me, just like, "What are you doing? We're shooting right now. Why would you shut it off?" And before I could respond or do anything, that woman started screaming, "Everybody out! Everybody out of this house! I need you out of this goddamn house before 7 o'clock! Get out! Get out!" Just complete pandemonium started. So the lighting and grip guys, who are typically have a reputation as being the most salty, handled this particularly poorly. and started really freaking out on this one particular woman. And at one point, the gaffer, I think, said, "Fuck you, you stupid bitch." And she said, "You're fired, you fucking idiot, get out of here. Like, I don't want you in here." So the grips reacted even more poorly, as you might imagine. They were throwing C-stands, throwing lights. The director got hit in the face with barn doors, which are the things that shape light in the front of a light head. Usually on sets are pretty well run, and there's a sense of order and departmental responsibility. So like lighting people take care of lighting stuff, camera people take care of camera stuff, and that's kind of how the whole system works. But everything just went out the window that night. People were grabbing lights and like literally throwing them into the trucks. They were literally taking cameras and just shoving them anywhere without lens caps on, which is a big deal. We were finding like shot footage on cards that were like strewn about. It was just complete chaos. At the end of the carnage, we all met up in a parking lot afterwards just to kind of discuss and unpack what had just happened. And the director got fired after that night, though it wasn't his fault at all. The lighting and grip departments all walked off or got fired. It's kind of vague what happened, but the entire G&E stopped working on the show after that day. 2 of the production coordinators either quit or got fired, all just because somebody didn't pull a permit. It was the craziest thing I've been a part of on set.
Thank you to Nick Borges for sharing his Just a Shit Show story. You'll be hearing more shit show stories in the future. Now, episode 24, Standing Rock.
In 2014, I went on Birthright, and it was at the tail end of the Gaza-Israeli conflict. We were at the lower base of Israel, right outside of Gaza, in this little town called Sderot. And every building that they have, including children's playgrounds, are made out of bomb-proof houses. I remember we were in this playground, and there was this giant worm, and you can kind of like go in and out of the worm in these kind of like little crawl spaces. But the walls of this worm were 2 feet thick, and it was basically a bomb shelter for children. It dawned on me that I needed something more. I needed to try and help move the needle in some way and not towards just selling sunglasses. It just so happened that I got word a few months later that a few thousand of my fellow employees and I were being laid off. I was like, perfect. This is great. This is kind of my push that I need. And I took my severance and invested it all in photo gear. I just started shooting my butt off.
This is Kit Karzen. Kit and I work together on MasterChef, and I'm sure you have people like this in your life where you work next to them on a daily basis, and you just think of them as, this is Joe. Joe works in billing. But then one day, you find out not only does Joe work in billing, but he's also an inventor. And it's just so happened he's just invented a time machine. And it works. And he's going to be interviewed on Fallon, followed by a few podcasts and 60 Minutes. And also, they're starting a reality show about Joe, because he's the most fascinating person. That's how it has felt working with Kit Karzen. Kit is a casting assistant on MasterChef. His main job is to chaperone the contestants and make sure their needs are taken care of, making sure they're getting bathroom breaks and food and water, going to bed at a decent time. He started working in TV because he felt compelled to learn more about the storytelling process. From ages 13 to 19, Kit was a professional cyclist, competing across the world. He then worked for Oakley, and it was during his time at Oakley that he went on Birthright and realized his conviction to cover the stories of social justice issues. Since then, Kit has made a point to cover situations of conflict. This past Thanksgiving, during his Thanksgiving break, Kit drove to Standing Rock to cover the protest against the Dakota Access Pipeline. Standing Rock is located in the southwest part of North Dakota and is part of the Sioux Reservation. The Sioux Nation is made up of the Dakota and Lakota nations, and the words Dakota and Lakota stand for friends or allies. This is my interview with Kit Karzen, and this is Kit's account of his time at Standing Rock. You said you were reading a few articles.
Yep.
What were you reading that that made you think, oh, I should go to Standing Rock?
When it came to Standing Rock, a few things hit home. One, the fact that there were just so many issues stacked on top of each other, because it wasn't just a singular issue. You were dealing with Native American rights issues. You were dealing with police brutality issues. You're dealing with environmental issues. You're dealing with fossil fuel issues, litigation. There's such a ripple effect. And so when I saw what was being done there and what wasn't being told, I felt compelled to throw myself into that world. And I went as much as I could in a nonpartisan spectator and to try and cover and be non-biased. But I will just say that the Morton County Sheriff's Department and the police from the 5 surrounding states that were there enlisted made my job incredibly easy. I just had to tell the story. It just so happened to be that the story was so fucking horrific.
You decided to fly there. Which state did
I drove.
Oh, you drove there?
Yeah, I drove there. Yeah, I was like, I don't know what the conditions are like, renting a car, what if something happens to the car, what if I need to bug out really quick? So I hopped in my car and drove 15 hours one day and 10 the second.
Where did you stay that first night?
In my car, covered in tear gas.
You got there. Which day did you get in?
So I got there Sunday, late afternoon, and a couple hours later, that's when I saw everybody starting to run to the bridge. Rubber bullets are, being sprayed in the air, and concussion grenades and tear gas and pepper spray and water cannons.
You were tear gassed the first day that you were there?
Mm-hmm.
That night when you were when you guys were on the bridge?
Yeah. First, I ran with my eyes shut because it hurt so much that I was just running towards this river that was going underneath the bridge. And I just kind of kneeled down and put my camera on my back and just started putting water in my face just to try and do anything to make it stop burning, because it burns your face as well. One of the medics came up to me and I just kind of walked through this field with my hand on his shoulder, and he pulled me to the medic area, had milk and magnesia poured on my face, and I just went right back out because the story was still going, and I didn't drive 2,000 miles to be out in the first hour.
So you were able to have conversations with some of the natives, at least, from different tribes?
Mm-hmm.
Were you also able to talk with the military from the other side?
No.
Anybody from there? No.
It was impossible. I mean, aside from going on some of the actions, which is, they call them actions, not protests, because protesting, some were deeming it illegal in some areas, and so they call them actions, and they also don't call them protesters, they call them water protectors. So whenever you go on actions, you would have the police there, and some would talk and just kind of have light, friendly conversation, but they wouldn't actively interview. You could film them, but having a one-on-one, that was a no-go, unfortunately.
Do you think that they couldn't talk with you because they're all of one accord and they don't speak on their own behalf?
Yes. It was actually funny that you say that, because when I was driving back through Wyoming, I got pulled over for going 80 and a 70, and thankfully just got a warning. But the officer, we started talking about where I was coming from, and he said, yeah, we had 6 officers from my unit sent to the front lines. And I said, what's the word around the station? And he said they all came back with a big WTF.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So it's they were being told what to do, and they're like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. You can't say no to an order. If you're ordered to the front line, you go. Otherwise, you lose your job. And I pulled it to the side of the road in Colorado, and an officer just kind of pulled to the side of the road because I was taking photos and was asking, is everything okay? And so we started talking again, and he felt the same exact way. There are a lot of really incredible police officers whose goal is to protect and serve. And I feel for them. I really feel for them to have to go through that.
And you were able to talk with different tribes, different people.
Yep.
What did you find out from them? And I really don't know anything about conflict within tribes or anything.
Yeah. There were over 300 tribes represented on the camp, which has never been seen in recorded history. That's how important this is to them. You know, these tribes are making it work because they are unified on a singular issue. You know, the indigenous tribal elders are the ones who kind of lay the law of the land on the camp. They're the ones who decide where the actions take place. They're the ones who have full authority. They are basically the only authority in the camp. And so you go through morning orientation every day at 9 o'clock for people who are new to the camp, and you basically are told this is how it works. And it's all about prayer. It's all about respecting the land. It's all about respecting each other. It's a nonviolent protest. They don't allow alcohol or drugs on the camp. It's a very, very clean atmosphere.
And it's all about prayer?
All about prayer. Everything is about prayer to them. Prayer happens before and after meals. It happens when you wake up. It happens when you go to bed. There are people who pray right before going on an action, and then there's another group of people who pray that the prayers of the people who just prayed will happen. Through prayer, they will persevere through this because, you know, Mother Earth, it wouldn't set them on the path for failure because they're the protectors of the earth.
They really believe they're the protectors of
Yes,
the earth.
100%. And I believe them. I really believe them.
When you were talking with them, was there anything in the conversation about forgiveness at all? Or was that like a heavy theme that you could sense while you were there?
Yes, actually. I mean, one great example was Thanksgiving. I was there the day of Thanksgiving, and one of the tribal elders came out to one of the, large groups that was getting ready for the feast, and he was told that he was come to ask speak. It was so ironic and weird that it was even happening. But the way that he put it was, what he tells his kids is, it is what it is, and you move on. Even when it came to the actions, the water protectors would be face to face with policemen and just plead for them for peace. We're here to protect you and the environment and your kids, and you can come join us. They know that they are not going to win this war through violence.
Yeah, you said that there was no violence on their part at all. Like you said, one person threw a half bottle of water.
Yeah, I mean, it was so funny to me how, not funny at all. It was so actually incredibly sad to watch, even Sunday night, which is my first night there. You have rows of these armed militia from the sheriff's department. The water protectors they literally have nothing. They're shielding themselves from water cannons with the tops of plastic lid bins. The most scary thing to watch is people just going to the front lines just to be hit so that others don't have to be.
If someone's spraying a cannon of water, how fast is that water coming out? I don't know if you literally know that.
But I got hit and it is a blast. It is not your shower. It's for riots. These people aren't rioting.
Did you learn anything about, because something I'm confused about, and honestly I need to read. My question was, why did they build the pipeline if they knew they were going to be going through sacred land?
Well, so originally it was actually supposed to go through Bismarck, a white town, an oil town as well. People said no, so why not go through it's the land that they're going through right now is technically Army Corps land. But the treaty that was signed in the 1800s for the Native American land states clearly that is Native American land. So it's already been taken away once. And now, because it's deemed as public domain, the pipeline can just kind of technically go through it. And so that's where this big protest is coming from. So you have the Dakota Access Pipeline, which is owned by Energy Transfer Partners. It's being built from the Bakken oil fields to transport over 400,000 gallons of oil every day. What that does is it poses a few problems. One is, obviously, it's going through sacred burial land. The second is, and I actually didn't know this until there were a few whistleblowers from oil companies that were at the camp. They were in charge of covering up oil spills. Every oil pipeline naturally leaks, but a pipeline alert doesn't come on until there's a loss of pressure of 1.5%, which is, deemed as an oil spill. But when you're transferring over 400,000 gallons of oil every day, even just 1% of that, you do that day and day and day and day, that's not good. And one of the big crossings that this pipeline has is going through the Ogallala Aqueduct, which is one of the largest aqueducts on the planet. It's where like 30% of the United States groundwater comes from this aqueduct, and it's massive. It goes like all the way down to Texas. So when you have this pipeline that's leaking potentially thousands of gallons of oil a day through this incredibly important aqueduct, you not only are contaminating this water, which will then no longer be usable, but then from a national security standpoint, if I really wanted to do some damage and I'm a domestic or foreign terrorist, I don't need to go after a metropolitan city. I can just go after this pipeline that's hitting our aqueduct. And if somebody were to take that out and create, a BP-sized oil spill like what we saw in the Gulf, the United States is effectively in a water war. And we're going to have to start importing water. Can you imagine that? You think of Flint, Michigan, their entire water system is ruined, and they have to replace thousands and thousands of pipes. That's just one city. So from a Native American standpoint, it's incredibly offensive. From an environmental standpoint, it's highly toxic. From a national security standpoint, it's incredibly threatening. And not to mention, I understand where these small communities are coming from that are based on oil. The only problem is they don't know what they don't know when it comes to clean energy. There is a time limit to the amount of fossil fuels that we can actually extract in the United States. But clean energy, for every $1 million that clean energy versus fossil fuels puts towards the GDP for the United States, clean energy can give up to 9 times as many jobs as what coal and oil and fossil fuels can give. So these tiny towns, I understand where their fear comes from, but when you have an entire new infrastructure that needs to be built from ground zero, the amount of jobs, high-paying jobs, diverse jobs that can literally change these towns overnight, I wish they knew.
Kit, I heard this interview on NPR, and they were interviewing one of the natives. I don't know like what tribe he was from or anything, but he said that there were prophecies amongst the tribes of this happening, but it was a black snake that was coming underground. Did you hear about that at all?
Yeah. Well, so they call the pipeline the Black Snake.
Huh.
That was a big message that was being held within the camp. I don't think many, non-Indigenous people understand what, the whole Black Snake reference, but it's incredibly important to them that message be portrayed and shared.
How do you feel about your photography, the pictures that you got while you were there? I know you sold some of them. You were able to sell some of them.
When I came back, I felt... Well, I cried almost the entire way when I was driving back from Standing Rock. Like, to leave them, it was like me leaving cycling all over again, like I was leaving my family. It was so unfulfilling for me in that I felt like I needed to do so much more. Mm-hmm. It's great, a bunch of posts made some airwaves, and I've had so many people come up to me and, ask questions and want to talk about it. And I think that's awesome. I just, to come back and, now live in Los Angeles. And living in Los Angeles, a lot of people's first thing that comes to mind is, Donald Trump and the fear that they have and stuff like that. The Dakota Access Pipeline is not top of mind. And unfortunately, that's in part because, mass media just isn't covering it because it doesn't have the aha.
I don't know how it can't.
Yeah.
When I first heard that this was happening, I was like, why are we not listening?
Yeah.
Why aren't they taking these people seriously?
Yeah. That's why kind of this, satirical slapstick television, that's makes me cringe to see that get the audience that it does, and something so vitally important to the country right just a few thousand miles away, it infuriates me. You know, when we were talking about like waking up with ideas and stuff, a lot of that has to do with, you know, how can I help make a message connect and resonate even deeper with someone? Is it, you know, doing prints of images? Is it fundraising through this way? Is it going to a different event or fundraiser or donating time? Like, I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I can only try my best. And, you know, watching people just troll the internet and just, you know, have so much to say but nothing to do. It's just fucking bullshit. I love that people have something to say, but just do it in a productive manner. I think so many people have paralysis by analysis of, you know, there's so much media and stories and people are just getting overwhelmed, but you can't take a day off nowadays because the people who want to just watch the world burn are not taking a day off. And that just means people like, you know, you and I have to work overtime.
I think that attitude online comes from like a real spirit of hopelessness and helplessness.
I think that definitely has something to do with it. I really do.
I feel like your action that you're taking is an action of hope.
You know, I had a few experiences when I came back and people started talking to me and trying to figure out what they could do to make a change. That gives me hope. Innovation will always outpace legislation. Now we just need to get the right innovators into power. And we need to give those people a voice and we need to give them resources. And as long as we can do that, then there is a chance. No matter as how dark these days may be and how scary they may be, and as much as some mornings you just don't want to get out of bed, you have to. And you got to turn on the afterburners.
Are you currently in contact with anybody still at Standing Rock right now? And
I have a few people, yeah. And it's, you know, they're in the thick of winter.
And the people are just still standing there in solidarity.
Still there in solidarity. Yeah, a few thousand. But they, you know, they're tough.
And Kit, you said that you were leaving as the veterans were trickling in.
Yes. I talked to a few. What an amazing moment in time. I mean, what a stance. You know, and they would yell across the barricades to the officers who were talking, you know, back to them on loudspeakers. And they're like, I signed up to protect this country. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
It makes me so happy to see stuff like that.
It's like knights in shining armor.
Literally knights in shining armor.
Do you have any current issues that you're focusing on right now that you would like to go and cover?
It's funny you say that. I was talking with one of our associate producers on the show, and she and I were talking about taking a vacation for winter break. You know, she's talking about an actual vacation, and my Thanksgiving vacation, I used it to go cover the conflict in North Dakota. And so she's like, you know, we could go to this place or this place. And I said, what if we went to Aleppo? And she's just like, what? You know, I've thought about, you know, trying to go to one of the surrounding countries, because you can't fly into Syria as an American, you know, go to one of the surrounding countries and, you know, try to go to the border. And do I find a underground railroad of refugees and interview them and try and understand what's going on? You know, do I try and force my way into the crossfire? Do I, you know, try and track a group of white helmets? Like, these are the ideas that go through my mind on a daily basis. Like, how can I move that needle? So if I can go and, you know, try and lend a helping hand or a talent, then why not? You know, and if I were to die in the process, then if that is what is needed to make that story told and more eyeballs be focused on it, then so be it. Because I truly believe now that it is my mission in life to try and tell the stories for social justice and environmental change. And I will do my damnedest to try and, you know, move that needle. You know, I know some people who are so broke all they have is money. It comes to us in understanding that the most valuable currency there is the effect that you have on people. But if you've never been to a rally or a protest, I dare you to go to one. If you've never called your congressman to complain about something, try it out. If you've never donated to a local organization or a national, NGO, do it. But, do something.
I wish you, actually, I bless you and your adventure of telling stories, helping to tell people's stories.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Of course, it was my pleasure.
Kit was at Standing Rock Sunday, November 20th to Friday, November 25th. On Saturday, December 4th, just 1 week later, 4,000 military veterans arrived at Standing Rock to stand in solidarity with the Sioux Nation. That same day, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was denied the permit to continue with the Dakota Access Pipeline. Today, as I am recording this, January 24th, 2017, just moments ago, President Trump has signed an executive order to push forward with the pipeline. To sign a petition against the Dakota Access Pipeline, go to respectourwater.com. That's REZPECT, ourwater.com. You can also donate to the cause at standwithstandingrock.net, or you can follow and stand with the military veterans on Facebook at Veterans for Standing Rock. That's Veterans 4 Standing Rock. To see Kit Karzen's photos from his week at Standing Rock, go to kitkarzen.com. That's KITKARZEN.com. You can also follow Kit on Instagram and Twitter at Kit Karzen. Thank you to Kit Karzen and Nick Borges for sharing their stories, and thank you to Jordan F. and Chris Zabriskie for letting me feature their music. To hear more of Jordan F.'s and Chris Zabriskie's music, you can follow the links in this episode's description on your listening device or go to bandcamp.com. You can also find more information on the Dakota Access Pipeline in this episode's description or at ColleenLindell.com. There, you can follow links to the original 1851 Fort Laramie Treaty, which states the land's original boundary lines, as well as articles from The New Yorker, The Washington Post, and videos including a 30-minute interview with Wes Clark Jr., the veteran responsible for starting Veterans for Standing Rock. You can also see pictures of Wes and other veterans kneeling before a group of Lakota elders and receiving a blessing during a forgiveness ceremony. This episode of Mostly Minutia was recorded on location in West Hollywood, Los Angeles, California.